Hey guys, and good evening, and good evening. We are back in a special midweek refuel. We are live on location here at We Studios. You guys can see the logo, the Grounded logo behind me. If you haven't been following along, Grounded is something that we do the first Sunday of every month, and it is an exploration into the human experience, spirituality, creativity, and trying to encourage us to get through certain aspects of our lives and become the best version of ourselves. I'm blessed enough to be one of the panel couch participants, if you will. We've got this wonderful couch that we sit on, and we kind of lead the discussion along with an audience. And we are back here. We sat down, Omar and I sat down, and we thought, man, it'd be very cool to be able to partner both New Life International and Elevate We to bring a unique experience where we are going to be here live with people coming in. And I'm just excited to be moving toward the ability to have people sit in on our midweek refuel. We're going to stay focused again, of course, on the virtual aspect, but about once a quarter, we may go even as frequently as once a month. We're going to be coming to you with a live opportunity to sit in and have discussion after the virtual midweek refuel. So those who are here in the audience, we'll be able to have a discussion about the lesson after the fact. So I'm excited about this. It's kind of a hybrid midweek refuel, and I'm just thrilled to be partnering with Elevate We. I'm thrilled to be here. And of course, I'm thrilled to be with you all, my New Life family. As you come in, we've got about 2 minutes, and we're going to jump right into this. This is a very unique lesson, one that I've been holding on to for a while. And it's very cool that this is the opportunity for us to talk about not resetting and worry. You can't do both. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But as you come in, please make sure that you are sharing this. Make sure that you are tagging people. If you see people, my New Life family that should be here, remind them that we are live and we are here back again with another exciting midweek refuel. As we talk about often, we want it to be a real word that is relevant, empowering, applicable, and loving. We never want you to leave our Sunday morning worship experience. We never want you to leave a midweek refuel and be scratching your head. We never want you to be bewildered. We don't ever want you to be wondering, how do I apply this? What do I do with what I just learned? How do I even use this in my everyday life? So Pastor and I are very adamant that we put you in a position to utilize everything that we talk about here in our midweek refuel and in our Sunday morning worship experience. We want it to be practical. We want you to be able to take these tools, take this knowledge, and take these concepts and put them into practice immediately. You can make adjustments to your life. You can make adjustments to what you're experiencing. You can make adjustments to the way that you are living, and thus the way that things are happening for you immediately. And that's what we want to see here at New Life, is that you are being able to take this information and utilize it every day. And it's going to make a difference in your life and the lives of those around you. Again, we're getting ready to kick this right off. The topic for this evening is you can't reset and worry. And like I said, I've been sitting on this for a while because I was reading a book by Dr. David Stoop, and the original came out in about 1969, and it's called You Are What You Think. And so it's talking about affirmations. It's talking about self-talk and how we perceive ourselves, and the way that we talk to ourselves will ultimately inspire and encourage and shift the way that we function and the way that we believe in ourselves and believe in our situation and surroundings. And one of the things that he talked about that really got me thinking was he mentioned Job, and he mentioned that Job was a worrier. And it got me thinking about the all of my experiences in terms of hearing people preach from Job. And they always talk about his situation. They talk about what he went through. They talk about him getting double for his trouble. You guys know a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the fact that you have to also be mindful of the company your company keeps. And we went from Job, and we talked about how his friends came, and his friends had information that they didn't withhold, but they withheld and didn't share till after Job was already going through something. We talked about how they were hoping for his downfall. You can see that as they come one after the other in this secondary and tertiary relationship. And you got to watch out for that level of company, because they were hoping for something to happen, and then they blamed him. And we read that story profusely, but this was a different take and a different aspect of Job that I hadn't thought about. And so I really want to read part of this book, and just one excerpt that really frames the concept that Job was a worrier, and that his worry is actually what opened the door for the possibility for Satan to have to be able to test him. Now, we talk about the fact that God allowed it to happen, but the other side of that equation, when we talk about the human experience and we talk about our role in our lives and our role in our suffering and our role in our situations, is that Job was worrying all the time. And that worry caused him to be a little more fearful, and it caused apprehension. And that apprehension, we talk about this often, that when you are trying to exercise your faith, you cannot be apprehensive, because your faith says it's going to happen. Your faith says everything is going to be well. Your faith says everything is going to work out in your favor. Worry tells you that it may, but it may not. Apprehension says, well, I don't know, because I'm not sure these things are going to work out the way that I need them to work out. And so you see how worry is the antithesis of faith. And so even though we like to think that Job was a tremendous man, and he was, there was an aspect to Job's life that we haven't ever explored. So tonight we're going to jump into that. And I want to read, this is again, Dr. Davis Stute. And this is You Are What You Think. You guys can find this book anywhere. I actually forgot to bring my physical copy, but was able to find a copy online. So this is on page 40. And I'm just going to start about halfway through one of the paragraphs. And we're just going to read a couple paragraphs, again, just to frame the concept that Job was actually worrying, and worrying to the point where he created the opening that allowed Satan to come in and begin the trials that we are all familiar with. And it says here, he walks slowly and worries much. He worries about his sheep. Well, were any stolen? Are his servants being honest with him? He worries about the weather and the effect on his crops. He worries about his children and his wife. He probably worries about himself, whether or not he was covered. And every possible sin with his sacrifice. Perhaps he even worries about his sacrifices, whether the animals offered were the best ones, or if he had spent a little more time, he could have found a better animal. His mind is constantly preoccupied with worry. From all outward appearances, Job has absolutely nothing to worry about. He has everything he needs, but he worries about everything. And by the third chapter, the things Job worries about become reality. Imagine the scene in heaven as described in the opening chapter of the book. Satan goes to God, and God comments on his servant Job. Job is a man who fears God, and God points that out. But Satan reminds God that the hedge has been built around Job, but the hedge isn't there. His protection is gone. You see, Job was busy trimming the hedge with his worries. Each day he has gone out and tried to make the hedge a little straighter, a little neater, but has never been satisfied with his work. And he has trimmed until the hedge is gone. His worried self-talk has trimmed the hedge, giving Satan an opportunity to attack. Job's self-talk is irrational. And earlier in the book, he talked about irrational thoughts and how they affect your mind. But I wanted to read that because when I read it, I had to pause. And that's actually how this entire midweek refuel came about. This entire concept came about because I was like, man, I'd never even considered Job to be a worrier. I'd never even been taught or even explored the idea or the possibility that Job had a role to play. And I know this may shake a little bit of you all, and it may be like, oh, there's no way this is possible. But let's go ahead and let's verify this with scripture. So our scripture is going to be Job. This is Job 1, and 5 through 8. And it says, and it was so when the day of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. He did this all the time. Why? Because he was worried. Now, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. Satan was also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth, from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said to Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job? And there is none like him on earth, perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil. And again, that was Job chapter 1, verses 5 through 8. And so you can see here, when we go back to verse 5, it says that, and it was so when the days of their feasting were gone about. That's revelry. That's when they were having a great time and a grand opulent time and celebration. Job sent and sanctified them and rose up early in the morning and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus Job did continually. So you can see here that he was concerned. You can see here that there was a level of worry that Job had. And again, if you want to look at the verification, there's your scriptural verification that Job was concerned. He was worried. He did this continuously. What did he say? Maybe. That's worry. That's anxiousness. That's apprehension. He said, maybe that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. And so he had to continue. He felt that he had to continually atone for that. He felt that way, and he was worried all the time. And so you can see that worry created the opportunity, because he wasn't practicing his faith. He was operating from a place of fear and a place of apprehension and a place of anxiousness and a place of worry. And that's what we want to talk about tonight as we get into this a little bit deeper. We have to understand that when we are worried, we are saying to God that I don't really believe that you're going to take care of what you said you're going to take care of. And I get that it's going to be hard when you're looking at that situation down, in its face, and you're in that tunnel and you can't see the light, you can't see the forest for the trees, you have all these things happening, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't know how I'm going to get out of the situation. We've all been there. Many of us are there right now trying to figure out, how am I going to get out of the mud? How am I going to get unstuck? How am I? And you see the fallacy in our thinking is that it's how am I? When really we should be just saying, God, I believe you. God, I trust you. God, I know you're going to do it. God, I know that you're going to make this work. I know that you're going to open this door. I know that you're going to make this move. I know you're going to help me get this bill paid. I know that something is coming. I know that some things are going to happen in my favor. But because we are operating with our human senses, we're looking around and we're saying, my goodness, I don't know that this is going to work out. My goodness, I don't know how this is going to change. My goodness, I don't know how I'm going to feed my family. My goodness, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. And we get worried. And as we've been talking about resetting, this is what came to my spirit, was about resetting and realizing that it's impossible to reset and continue to worry. As we've been talking about resetting over the course of this entire year, we've been talking about different ways that you reset, different facets of resetting, and different components to the reset process. And the reset is meant for you to get to a place where certain things no longer bother you. The reset is a place that you get to where you are no longer connected to the wrong people. You're no longer connected to things that are keeping you bound. You're not connected to things that are looking from the lens of your past. You're not connected to things that are keeping you thinking about your past failures, and you're thinking about all the things that should have happened, and that's causing you this apprehension. It's causing you to worry. Why? Because you are looking at everything through your own personal experience and not looking at it through a place of both learning and growth, and also a place of faith, and realizing that, okay, God is getting ready to do something different. Why? Because he's already done this, and this. You see, so often, you guys have heard me talk about our short-term memory loss, right? And I say that because we have God deliver us, or something miraculous happens, or something shifts in the atmosphere, something happens that cannot be explained. And then 2 weeks later, we're ready to hit the panic button. 2 days later, we're ready to hit the panic button. A month later, we're ready to hit the panic button. Why? Because we've already forgotten that we were delivered from something just in that short time. And so when we are always in a space of getting ready to panic, we're in a space of potentially worrying ourselves. What we hear people say all the time, you're going to worry yourself to death. And here, when we look at Job, God said you could not take his life. Had he had not made that declaration, he worried himself to death. He would have been tried all the way to death. And I know people are looking like, man, I never thought about that. And I'm in the same boat. I never thought about that, but it's completely accurate. You see, again, in verse 5, it says he did it continually. He was always worried about something. And so let me leave you with 3 points tonight. I don't want to be in front of you guys long this evening, but it was important. This is one I've been sitting on. I've been really wanting to teach on, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we talk about being practical. This is where we talk about how do we shift the worry component. But first, we have to understand what worry does. And so I want to give you guys 3 points this evening that is just going to be, hopefully this will help you all understand why it's so important for both the self-talk, as Dr. Stoop is talking about. These are affirmations that we call them, and that we have to remind ourselves. This is why getting in your scripture is so important. This is why your prayer life is so important. This is why your fasting is so important. Your meditation is important. This is why being grounded is important. Why? Because you got to be reminding yourself, because the word says that the enemy is always on the prowl. He is always on the move. He is always looking. He's always lurking. He's always waiting for that chink in your armor. He's waiting for that worry to open the door. He's waiting for something to happen that's going to make you slip and not be utilizing your faith the way that you should. And so let's look at these points, and then I'm gonna get out your way for the evening. Point number 1 is worry opens the door. When you're worried, you are out of focus. Why? Because you're focused on something completely different. When you're worried, you're looking at the situation. What we just say, when you're worried, you're not exercising your faith. Remember, your faith is going to tell you that no weapon that formed against you shall prosper. The weapon will form, but it will not prosper. The weapon will take shape, but it will not harm you. The weapon will happen, but you will still be victorious. But see, worry says, it could be the end. Worry says that you're never going to make it. Worry says that you're not going to come out of this victorious. Worry says you're not going to overcome. Worry says that you're going to maybe even go backwards and be in a worse position than you were before. But that is not the God that we serve. That is not what he says in the scripture. That's why we have to exercise our faith. But you see, when you start to worry, your mind starts to shift. And we've all talked about the fact that everything happens up here. Pastor talked about that last week. It starts up here. It's why you hear me say, what? First, let's change the way that we think, so we change the way that we live. We have to do that first, right? Out of the what? Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. But before it gets to the heart, it is first a thought, and then it becomes a belief. And that's when it gets trapped here, and that's when it begins to come out. That's when you begin to speak that thing into existence. Not to get ahead of myself, but it's important to realize that you have to be vigilant in your mind. And worry is an attack on your mind. Worry is an attack on your thoughts. Worry is an attack on your perception. Worry is a way to keep you from looking ahead with excitement. It's a way to keep you from looking ahead with gratitude. It's a way to keep you from looking ahead with a feeling of anticipation for what God is going to do and what's going to happen in your life. That's what worry keeps from happening. And that attack on your mind opens the door for you to spiral. That attack on your mind opens the door for you to go down into a depressive state, go down into an oppressive state. This is where you begin to start having that negative self-talk. Oh, I'm never going to be anything. It's never going to happen for me. I'm never going to get past the situation. I'm never going to be somebody. And all the things that we've heard and we've likely said to ourselves at some point in time, because we've all been in a state where we didn't feel like we were ever going to be worthy. But God is telling you right now that you are enough, and that you've got to stop telling yourself that you aren't, and you've got to stop worrying, because he's going to do exactly what he said he's going to do. Which brings me to my second point. Worry creates our reality. If life and death are in the power of the tongue, and we can manifest the reality that we see, then it of course stands to reason that when you worry, and when your thoughts are in the wrong place, and that when you're focused on the wrong things, guess what? That's going to shape the reality that you see. Even in Dr. Stoop's book, he said that eventually all of Job's worries came to pass. Now, how many times, and you guys are thinking about this, how many times have you been worried about something that has not happened, and then it does happen? Think about that for a second. How many times have you been concerned about something to the point where all of a sudden that thing came to pass? Now, the problem is we think that that thing coming to pass is justification for our worry, when really we created that situation because of our worry. Let me say that again. We think that the situation that happened was justification for us to be worried, but we actually created the situation out of our worry. Worrying is what created the situation that has come to pass. The thing that you didn't want to happen, and I'm going to talk about that in point number 3, actually happened because you were so worried about it. You were so concerned about it. You were so wrapped up in it. You were so worried about what was going on that you eventually created that exact situation. And so that's why we have to be careful about being worried. That's why we have to be careful about what we are telling ourselves, because we are telling ourselves things that we then put into the atmosphere. We then put it into the world, and that creates our reality. So point number 2 is worry creates our reality. That's why we have to be careful about being worried. There's a difference in having concern and having worry. When you're concerned about something, you acknowledge there's a potential for danger, disaster, hurt, harm, or the other. There's a potential for that. When you're worried, you're saying that eventually it's going to happen, even though it hasn't happened yet, even if there's no proof of that, even though it's never happened before. You're worried. And this is about the irrational worry portion that we talked about with Job, about his irrational worry is something that has never occurred ended up happening because he worried himself into that situation. So you got to be careful about that. And point number 3, worry manifests fear, right? So everything that you're afraid of, the thing that you didn't want to have happen, your worry is going to be the catalyst to create that situation. Why? Because it's going to shape your perception, it's going to shape your emotional response, and it's going to shape how you move and how you behave. So you may not think that being worried about something can completely change the circumstances that you're in, but in fact, it is exactly what leads you to move in a particular way. It is what is the exact piece of your ability, right? When we talk about manifestation, we talk about materializing things. This is the one part that will actually completely change who you are, how you move, how you think, and then that changes everything around you because it affects all your circumstances. It affects all your interactions. It affects all your different relationships. So everything that you are concerned about that you didn't want to have happen, you're going to create that situation. That's why the worry you have to be careful about being worried. You have to be careful about living in a state of worry. The Bible says, right, we're not to be in a state of fear. God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. Do not be afraid shows up 365 days in the Bible. Why? Because we are not to be afraid. So your worry will manifest the thing that you are most fearful of. Why? Because you're focused on that and not focused on God's promise. You're focused on that and not focused on the way that God has spoken to you, the promises that he's made, the vision that he's given you, the things that he's already come to pass. Remember, short-term memory loss. We are so focused on all the things that are happening that we often forget that God just did a thing for us. We forget that he just delivered us from something. We forget that he just protected us from something. This could have been yesterday. It could have been last week. But the moment something happens again, we get ready to worry, hit the panic button. And then we start shifting the way that we think, the way that we operate, the way that we behave, and the way that we communicate with those around us. And then we create the exact situation that we didn't want to see happen. So I just want to give you guys that word. I know it was brief, but it doesn't have to be all night for it to be impactful. We have to be mindful of worrying, and we have a scriptural reference for that. See, Job was a worrier, and Job's worry trimmed the hedge. We talk about a hedge of protection. So he took a piece off. Every time he was worried about something, he took a piece off. And every time he took a piece off, it lowered the defenses, and it lowered the wall, and it lowered his protection. So eventually, Satan was able to scale that wall, to slip through the cracks, and to begin the attack. So we have to be mindful that being worried is a state that will lead us into destruction. Being worried is a state that will lead us into a cataclysmic set of circumstances, because we are operating and we are sitting and we are staying and we are keeping ourselves in a mental state that will not allow us to see what God is doing. It'll allow us to see what the enemy's doing. We will see that very clearly. We will see that all day long. We can see all the problems, all the things that aren't happening for us, all the things that are going wrong, but we're not looking at all the things that are going right. We're not looking at all the things that have already happened for us. We're not looking at all the things that are shifting and changing. We're not looking at the way that God is actually moving and operating on our behalf. We are just looking at all the things that aren't happening right. So we got to be careful, guys. And I want to continue to drive that point home. You can't reset and be worried. because your reset requires your absolute focus, because your reset is going to require some changes. Your reset is going to require you to evaluate people, evaluate circumstances, and evaluate yourself. And you can't afford to be worried in a season when you're trying to reset. In fact, you're not going to be able to reset as long as you're worried, because you're focused on everything except your reset. You're focused on everything except making those changes. You're focused on everything except making that shift. You're focused on everything except your evolution and your elevation. You see, every time that you are worried about something, you're taking time, energy, and focus away from where God is trying to tell you to put those things. You're doing everything except making the necessary steps, making necessary changes, the necessary transitions. That metamorphosis that we've been talking about, what the reset actually does in terms of turning you into a new person, is halted because you're worried about stuff that God's saying, I'm already taking care of. I've already dealt with that. That's already done. That door is already open. I grounded about the fact that the space that you are supposed to be in is already there for you. You have to go and occupy it. That space already exists. You don't have to fight anybody for it. That blessing that's for you, it's already there. But as long as you're worried about something else, you can't even walk into that. See, worry makes you look backwards because your experience is telling you that all these things that have gone wrong are going to continue to go wrong. So you're worried instead of being excited about the fact that all these things went wrong, which means that God's getting ready to do something magnificent. We've all heard that, right? The battle gets the most fierce right before the blessing happens. You are on the cusp of your change. You're on the cusp of your transition. You are right on the precipice of getting ready to walk into the best season of your life, but you're too busy being worried. So you're going to have to shift your mindset, because this is a time where your reset is going to depend greatly, and the magnitude of your reset is going to depend greatly on how you think about things, how you focus things, where you focus things, and how you make those adjustments. We talk about pivoting. We talk about the adaptation portion of a reset, because you are going through this change where you are going to become something completely different. And a lot of people are not going to be able to deal with that. A lot of people are not going to want that for you. A lot of people are not going to want to see you to move away from them. They want to keep you where they're comfortable, not support you in your growth. Likewise, you're going to run into situations, whether it's at your job, whether it's with friends, whether it's in other opportunities, entrepreneurial and the like, where you're going to have to really evaluate, is this connection right for me? Is this move right for me? And you can't do that if you're worried. You can't look at those things objectively and say, you know what, I need to evaluate where I'm going, who I'm going with, and all the things that come along with that growth and those steps in that process if you're worried. So you guys have to get to a place where you can genuinely not be worried. That peace that surpasses all understanding, that means that eradicates being worried. You're at peace because you don't have to be worried. You're at peace because you know that God's going to move. You're at peace because you know that door is for you. That door is going to open, and what's on the other side of it was also for you. That space is already there waiting for you to occupy it. But as long as you're worried, you can't walk. As long as you are worried, you're paralyzed. As long as you're worried and apprehensive, you're going to be looking in every direction except the one that you're supposed to be going in. So that's all I got for you guys today. Remember, you cannot worry and reset. Hope you guys enjoyed this word. Make sure that you have shared this on all your platforms. I want to thank everybody who's here live inside the studios right now. It's been a great opportunity, a great learning experience. I hope that you are excited. I hope that you are touched. I hope that you can apply this word. I mean, worrying is something that we all do. And it's something as simple as us reminding ourselves that there's no need to do such. You don't have to worry. And we talked about the reasons why what worry does, right? Point number one, worry opens the door for attack. Point number two, worry creates your reality. And point number three, worry manifests your fears. So guys, listen, you have the ability, you have the authority, and you have the power to make sure that you don't live in a state of fear, that you don't live in a state of anxiety, that you don't live in a state of apprehension, that you don't live in a state of worry. Remind yourself of all the things that have happened good for you. Remind yourself of all the times that God has come through for you. Remind yourself of where you're going. Remind yourself of where you've come from. Don't stay there, but it's good to remember that you've come a long way. You may not be where you want to be, but you're not where you were. That should be celebrated. So make sure that you're celebrating your wins. Make sure you're celebrating all the steps you're making. Every bit of progress is progress. Every step in the right direction, no matter how small, is still a step toward a better version of yourself and the best time that you'll ever have in your life as you continue to reset and change the narrative on how you want to live your life. Guys, we believe that new life is good ground to sow into, and we'll put our giving methods up on the screen. Thank you guys again for showing up for us tonight. It's always a pleasure. It's always an excitement. Listen, don't forget about our Sunday morning worship experience. Again, put the new address there in the chat. Also, guys, as you go through and give our giving methods, make sure that you type seed sown if you're able to do that right now. Of course, if not, just let us know that you have sown your seed, and myself and our overseer, Pastor Kai Sean Mitchell, will make sure to pray over your seed. Listen, guys, as you know, this new life is for everyone. So as always, let's change the way that we think so we can change the way that we live. And until next time, stay blessed.